The opening is cold, it's never warm. Tell a joke so they watch the whole show. Stick around for the LFC, the long form content. Usually it's a non sequitur. I don't even know what that means. They say it now on all the TVs and movie shows, all of them. Does it mean what led to it is not what came before it? I'm just going to stare at the camera in awkward silence and let the microphone record static. Now on to home video headlines.
Crack open a cold box of wine or pour something cold on ice because it's the Binge-Watchers podcast.
Netflix is developing In Case of Emergency, a family-style-esque animated series set in a British hospital. That sounds like a great live-action British comedy. Billy the Kid is getting renewed for a third and final season at MGM+. I didn't even know MGM Plus made a Billy the Kid series. So yeah, it makes sense that it's getting axed on the third season. I have no idea about this Billy the Kid show. Does anybody know about this Billy the Kid show? Ever heard that it existed? I don't know. Let's talk about Billy the Kid for a minute. How about Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid? How about Billy the Kid versus Dracula? How about Billy the Kid and Young Guns? And how about Billy the Kid in Bill and Ted? Those are your best Billy the Kids. So if you're not going to watch the show that's getting canceled on MGM Plus, go and look at the lineup of the Billy the Kid movies that I just told you. Trivia time. Formerly called Savage Stats. Now it's called Trivia Time, tonight's movie. All right. We're talking about Jason Lives, Friday 13th, Part 6, to finish off our Halloween movie lineup here on the show. Tommy Jarvis is back. He digs up Jason Voorhees' body because he wants to cremate the corpse. But then, of course, he brings Jason back to life. And, of course, the killer, seeks revenge. And this time, Tommy might not be able to stop him. And Jason Lives, Friday 13th, Part 6. Aside from Alice, who has a minor role in the first and second movies, Tommy Jarvis is the only other recurring protagonist in the series, even though he's been played by 3 different actors. Years after the release of this film, Kevin Williamson told director Tom McLaughlin that this film had a huge influence on him growing up and helped him, get inspired when he was writing Scream. Script revisions left out Jason's father, who paid for the burial and tombstone of Jason. Tom Matthews, who plays Tommy here, is equally well known to genre fans as Freddy from Return of the Living Dead. The director wanted to use lightning to reanimate the corpse and do a Hammer Films-esque gothic horror opening with graveyards and fog. Now, there are many horror references and inside jokes for Carrie, Halloween, the other Friday films, and so on. The opening title sequence is an obvious nod to the 007 James Bond openings. Rather than have a swift turn to the camera with a gunshot from a PPK, it's a swift turn to the camera with a machete slice. The director McLaughlin pointed out on the commentary what fans already know, that the film is devoid of nudity and features very minimal sex. He just never thought the idea that, if you have sex then you die makes any sense. The studio wanted Jason back after the previous movie's Fake Out, and also they wanted more kills to amp it up for an R rating, so they ordered some reshoots, at least for more gore in this one. After these messages, we'll be right back for my favorite bits from Jason Lives. Listen, if you're a horror movie fan or you just like good value, you can try Paramount Plus, which has a bunch of shows and soccer and all this other stuff, but it's the scary season, so watch their Pig Screaming. It's a bunch of horror movies, so you want to watch horror movies for a week, sign up for it. You get 7 days free. We have an AF link in our show notes there, and have fun. All right, now back to our favorite bits from Jason Lives in the show that's already in progress. It has the best return, I think, of Jason in any of the movies. A lightning strikes, and he's reanimated. The title sequence, which I mentioned briefly a moment ago in the trivia portion of the show. Anyway, I love the title sequence. I think it's one of the best. There's another one where it's like exploding hockey masks and everything's on fire, and that's a pretty good one. But the slice with the machete and 007 style is really kitschy and fun. Um, or just the parody of the 007 in a Jason movie that knows it's a Jason movie, which is this filmmaking technique called reflexivity, which I love, but I don't know if everybody loves it. But anyway, um, every kill in this movie feels like a short film with the characters. So when they get hacked away, you actually care that they're getting killed, which I think is an important thing for all horror movies. And not all horror movies can pull this off, but I think it's a very valuable technique. Um, the thing about Jason, he always puts the hockey mask back on, or a mask. It's like he's undead, but he's still vain. He's still vain as a person, so he's still got vanity even though he's dead. This episode is probably gonna run super short. I don't know. We'll see. We'll do my best here. Um, Ratings. How do we do it on the show? Binge now. Binge later. Binge never. Binge now. Watch it now. Binge later. Get around to it. Did I say binge never there or binge later? They sound too similar. Binge later is get around to it. Binge never is don't waste your time. You can't get the 90 minutes back of your life. Don't watch this thing. You're gonna be miserable and grind your teeth. Um, to rewatch this for this reaction show might be my 7th time in. It's been a while. I think this is my favorite of the Friday the 13th, aka Jason movies. I mean, it's also the first one that I think I saw on TV as a kid. If I had to rank some of my favorites, it would be Jason Lives, Jason X, or Jason 10. That's where he's in outer space. And Jason Takes Manhattan. That's part 8. However, how Tommy kills Jason in their first encounter, which I think is in part 4, around part 4 maybe. And also, it's Corey Feldman. So Corey Feldman actually gets the most iconic and brutal way to get rid of Jason in any of the movies. So that's worth taking a look at too. But anyway, however, for Jason Lives Part 6, that's a binge now. Fan service. What are the fans doing? Are they chiming in? What do they have to say for themselves? Atlas Obscura, which is a brand about weird stuff, they actually gave me a shout out. They chimed in to tell me that the full 4,000 year story of Halloween after I gave just the best bits. I made a part of one of my other shows was talking about the origin of Halloween at the opener because that's the season we're in, right? And I was talking about the warding off evil spirits part, which I think is the most fascinating and the thing that'll send shivers down your spine. It's like that's the origin. But they chimed in and they wanted to tell me the whole story. They wanted to give everybody the whole 4,000 year history. I mean, just getting a brand like that to pay attention to my content, I thought was impressive. Anyway, so thank you for that shout out, Atlas Obscura. Staff picks, if I can recommend a movie of the week that is not the movie of the week. You're like, I'm done with Jason. I've seen all the Fridays, or I don't care to see him, whatever. What else you got? I watched They Live. I watched this thing 4 times now. This movie is I'm just going to tell you some stuff. You can look it up. It's a John Carpenter movie, obviously. The fight's real. There's a fight between the main characters, or the main character and his buddy, and the fight's real. Except they tried to abide by a rule of like no faces, no groins. It's Roddy Piper, so he's a trained stunt guy. He's a wrestler. He's a hardcore dude. And then, anyway, the idea of the sunglasses showing the truth is a cool concept. I mean, watching this in 2024 with all the alien talk and discussing how media stages shapes our opinions is pretty much well timed. It's also fascinating the idea of a complete wraparound, like artificial consciousness determining all of our decisions. That we're locked in that. Like it's not saying the world is a simulation, but an artificial consciousness that we're all walking around in, or there's like layers of reality or something. Roddy Piper had to leave the WWF to make the movie, but supposedly he did also write the famous movie line, "I'm here to do 2 things: kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of bubblegum." Supposedly they were also able to hire local homeless to do some work, and they fed them too. So that's a cool give back during the making of the movie. Nada is the character's name in the short story that this is supposedly based on. But damn, it would be great if this was just like another Jack Burton adventure, right? Because the characters look and sound similar. I mean, it's Roddy Piper in this. It's not Kurt Russell, but they were originally going out to Kurt Russell for this. But they look and sound so similar that it's like, why couldn't this just be something else that happened to Jack Burton? You know what I mean? Except, spoiler alert, technically, Nana gets blasted away at the end of this movie. Anyway, after he tries to bring down the final curtain or try to show the whole world what the aliens are up to by interrupting their broadcast. So they have a bunch of subliminal messages in the movie, but one that I really like this time is the poster says, or the billboard says, "Come to the Caribbean," but it really says "marry and reproduce," and then that joke comes back at the end too, like some girl. Oh, I dropped my headphones. That usually doesn't happen. I got so excited to tell you about this part of the movie, I dropped my headphones. The joke comes back at the end of the movie. Some chick is banging one of the aliens and then realizes it's an alien because the broadcast is disrupted. Now everybody can clearly see all the aliens. And he's like, "What's wrong, babe?" And then you see the sign, "Marry and reproduce." Um, so there's a famous newsstand sequence. It's like when he's first reading all the magazines that say like "obey" and don't have any thoughts and stay asleep, etc., etc. That there's like an alien there, and he's like, "What's wrong with you, bub? Why do you keep staring at me?" And through this subliminal messaging, you're kind of wondering like, but then you watch the guy who's the alien buy a newspaper as well from the magazine stand, and you have to pause and go, "Why is the alien buying the Obey newspaper? He doesn't need subliminal messaging." And I thought if they ever did do a sequel to They Live, it would be funny if the sequel had like a supercomputer that was feeding another layer of BS to the aliens themselves. Like they're also trapped in an artificial layer of reality. That would be interesting. Anyway, um, this one is running a little bit short. Look, I told you my best parts of Friday the 13th Part 6. Um, you're right. I have a soft spot for Jason 10, which most Friday fans don't like. He goes to space. They made fun of it on another podcast. How did this get made? I think it was. Um, but it's really funny because it talks about the mythos and the history of Jason. He's frozen. He's thought out in the future, and he takes on some science students in a spaceship. I think it's great. Anyway, whatever. And then it crash lands, and he's back at a new summer camp in the future, ready to kill again. Plus, it gets upgraded because nanobites think they have to repair him because he's dead tissue, and I think that's great. So you get like the super Jason versus an android in space. It's just a fun. It's almost fan fulfillment. Like a lot of fans are like, where can we take it, and how fun can we have with this? And that's it. There's also Jason Goes to Hell, which is the other like non-linear Jason movie. And in that movie, it's not Kane Hodder, it's not any of the Jason actors. It's literally like the origin of like why he has magic to come back, and it's demonic, and it reanimates him, and it's like a worm type thing, and it goes into different bodies. So it's more of like a parasitic, demonic origin thing. But at the end of that movie, Freddy pulls him into hell, and then we get like a setup for the whole concept of like Jason fighting Freddy, right? Which everybody wanted. By extension, in comic books, you also have Freddy the Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street versus Jason from Friday the 13th versus the guy who stepped in to take them both out because they're both demons, is to take on Ash, from the Evil Dead franchise. And, at one point they're like, should this be a cartoon, an animated feature? Should it be a real live feature with the three of them fighting each other? That would be total fan service. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to pull that off, but Jason versus Freddy should have been able to be handled. And they did make a movie, but they brought in a foreign director who made it into a kind of an art film. And then Jay and Silent Bob are in there, but they're not really Jay and Silent Bob because they couldn't get Kevin Smith and Jay Mewes to be Jay and Silent Bob in this thing. So they made up a couple of stoners that are like them, that are the supporting cast fighting Jason and Freddy, and it does kind of fall apart. But I think there's probably fans out there that like the Jason vs. Freddy because it's the only one we're ever going to get, and whatever. The the best idea from that movie is the fact that Freddy is giving Jason nightmares. Like that was a really cool element. Yeah, that's it, man. I'd like you to watch They Live. Pardon me, now I'm burping. So I dropped my headset and I burped. It's like I committed to sins of podcasting in the same podcast. I don't even like to call it a podcast anymore. I think I've made that's why I keep saying the word show, show, and show, and show. Anyway, it's been a fun season. I hope you're having a happy Halloween. It's been real fun talking about some of these scary movies. Look, I'm done for a bit. I'm gonna come back during a season we like to call feel good movies. I'm gonna take a little break. I'm a little under the weather while I'm recording this too, so I've been following the AMC Fear Fest lineup for horror movies. That's on the blog. You can get the complete lineup for the whole month, what they're doing with horror movies, and of course, I mean, like every third thing that I do is a horror movie. Anyway, again, I'm just kind of rambling now at this point. Anyway, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I might come back, like I said, during feel good movie watching and talk about that during the holiday season. All right, man. Stay up, I guess. I don't know. Stay up really late, watch a bunch of horror movies, right? Pull an all-nighter if you can, like the good old days. You know, going to work and be like, "Are you hungover, Johnson? Are you hungover, Steve?" No, we're not hungover. We've just been watching the horror movies all night long.